There's a photograph on my desk that haunts me. It shows a woman standing on a beach at sunrise, arms outstretched, face tilted toward the sky in what looks like pure ecstasy. You'd think she just won the lottery, or fell in love, or received the best news of her life. But here's what you can't see in that photograph. 3 months earlier, this woman was told she had 6 months to live. 2 months earlier, she buried her daughter. And on the morning that photo was taken, she was in so much physical pain from her illness that she could barely stand. Yet, there she is, radiating something that looks suspiciously like joy. When I first saw this image, I thought it was fake, some sort of stock photo inspiration nonsense. But I met her. I talked to her, and she told me something that shattered everything I thought I knew about pain and happiness and what it means to survive the unsurvivable. She said, and I'll never forget this, pain tried to take everything from me, so I decided to take something back. What does that even mean? How do you take something back from pain? And more importantly, how is it possible that someone drowning in suffering, someone dealing with literal death and unbearable loss and physical agony all at once, could still find a way to feel alive, to feel joy, to feel anything other than crushed by the weight of it all? Most of us fall apart over a bad breakup or a failed project or a month of back pain. So what do people like her know that the rest of us don't? What secret are they carrying that allows them to walk through fire and somehow not get burned? Here's the thing about pain that nobody tells you. It's not actually the pain that destroys people. That sounds insane, I know. Stay with me. Think about the last time you were in serious pain, physical or emotional, doesn't matter. What were you thinking about? Probably not just the pain itself. You were thinking about how long it would last. You were thinking about what it meant. You were thinking about how unfair it was, how you didn't deserve it, how this wasn't supposed to happen to you. You were thinking about your future, imagining every day from now until forever poisoned by this same pain. You were thinking about the past, all the moments before the pain, when things were okay, when you were okay, and wondering if you'd ever feel that way again. You were thinking about other people who don't have your pain, resenting them, envying them, hating the universe for choosing you. And with each thought, each story, each spiral, the pain grew. Not because the actual sensation got worse, but because you were adding layer upon layer of suffering on top of it. Pain is what happens to you. Suffering is what you do with it. And this distinction, this microscopic gap between sensation and story, contains the entire secret of survival. The woman on the beach figured this out, not because she's special or enlightened or superhuman, but because when you're facing death and loss and agony all at the same time, you run out of energy to maintain the stories. You can't afford to waste your remaining moments fighting reality, demanding that things be different, drowning in the injustice of it all. You make a choice, maybe unconsciously at first, to be here with what is, instead of torturing yourself with what isn't. But let's back up, because I'm getting ahead of myself, and you're probably thinking this sounds like toxic positivity dressed up in philosophical language, like I'm about to tell you to smile through your suffering and think happy thoughts and everything will magically get better. That's not what this is. This is something stranger and darker and more honest than that. This is about looking directly at the mechanism of suffering and understanding how to interrupt it, not by pretending everything is fine, but by fundamentally changing your relationship to the pain that exists. Let me tell you about Michael. He's a tattoo artist in Seattle, and 10 years ago, he developed a condition called complex regional pain syndrome after a minor wrist injury. If you've never heard of this, imagine your nervous system going haywire, sending pain signals that have no off switch. The medical community calls it the suicide disease because the pain is so intense and unrelenting that many people can't survive it psychologically. Michael was told he'd never use his hand again, that the pain would be permanent, that his life as an artist was over. And for 2 years, that's exactly what happened. He became a ghost, stopped creating, stopped connecting with people, spent every moment in a hell of his own making, not just because of the pain, which was real and terrible, but because of what he believed the pain meant. Then something shifted. He won't call it an epiphany because it wasn't sudden or mystical. It was more like erosion, like his resistance slowly wore away until there was nothing left but acceptance. He started drawing again, even though it hurt, even though every line was agony, even though his hand would shake and the pain would spike and everything in him screamed to stop. And he noticed something bizarre. When he was focused on the drawing, when he was absorbed in the creation of something, the pain was still there, but it wasn't everything anymore. It became background noise, not gone, not diminished exactly, but repositioned. It was no longer the center of his universe. This is where it gets really interesting. Neuroscientists have studied people with chronic pain and discovered something profound about how the brain processes suffering. There are two distinct neural pathways involved. One pathway registers the sensory information, the actual physical data about pain location and intensity. But the other pathway, the one that determines how much you actually suffer, is all about meaning and emotion and anticipation. This pathway is where your brain asks questions like, what does this pain mean about my future? Is this dangerous? Will it ever end? Am I broken? And depending on the answers your brain generates, your experience of the exact same pain signal can range from bearable to unbearable. In experiments, researchers can literally manipulate how much pain someone experiences just by changing the context around it. Tell someone their pain is temporary and purposeful, like muscle soreness from exercise that will lead to strength, and their suffering decreases. Tell them the same pain indicates permanent damage and progressive deterioration, and their suffering skyrockets. Same sensation, different story, different level of hell. Your brain is not a passive receiver of pain signals. It's an active interpreter, a meaning-making machine that can amplify or diminish your suffering based entirely on the narrative it constructs. So what happens when you interrupt that narrative? What happens when you stop asking those questions, stop generating those stories, and just allow the pain to be exactly what it is in this moment without adding mental suffering on top of it? This is what Michael discovered accidentally and what contemplative traditions have taught deliberately for thousands of years. The pain doesn't disappear, but something about your relationship to it fundamentally changes. Let's try something right now. Think about a discomfort you're experiencing in this moment. Maybe your back hurts from sitting. Maybe your neck is stiff. Maybe you're hungry or tired or anxious about something. Whatever it is, instead of doing what you normally do, which is either ignoring it or mentally complaining about it, just observe it. Don't judge it. Don't try to fix it. Don't tell yourself stories about what it means. Just notice where it is, what it feels like, how it shifts and changes from second to second. Because here's what you'll discover if you actually do this. The discomfort isn't solid. It's not one unchanging thing. It pulses, it moves, it has texture and variation, and the moment you observe it with curiosity instead of resistance, something in you relaxes. Not because the sensation changed, but because you stopped fighting it. This is the first key to living with pain without being destroyed by it. Stop fighting. Stop resisting. Stop demanding that reality be different than it is. And I know how that sounds. It sounds like giving up, like surrendering, like letting pain win, but it's actually the opposite. Fighting pain that you cannot eliminate in this moment doesn't make you strong. It makes you exhausted. It burns through your mental and emotional resources. It leaves you depleted and broken, not by the pain itself, but by the constant battle against it. Every moment you spend resisting reality is a moment you could have spent living your actual life. There's a woman named Tara who teaches meditation to people with chronic illness, and she uses this metaphor that completely changed how I think about pain. She says, imagine you're swimming in the ocean and you get caught in a riptide. Your instinct is to fight it, to swim directly against it back to shore. But that's how people drown. The rip current is stronger than you, and you exhaust yourself fighting it until you have nothing left. The way you survive a riptide is counterintuitive. You stop fighting. You swim parallel to the shore, moving with the current instead of against it, until you're out of its pull. Then you can swim back. Pain is the riptide. Fighting it directly is how you drown. Accepting it, moving with it, letting it be there without resistance, that's how you survive. But acceptance is tricky. It doesn't mean liking the pain. It doesn't mean wanting it. It doesn't mean giving up on trying to heal or improve your situation. It means acknowledging what is true right now without adding mental suffering on top of it. It means saying, yes, this pain exists in this moment, and I can be present with it without it defining my entire existence. This is so much harder than it sounds. Your mind will fight this concept with everything it has, because your mind believes its job is to fix things, to solve problems, to eliminate threats. And pain registers as a threat, so your mind goes into overdrive, analyzing and strategizing and catastrophizing, trying to think its way out of pain. But you can't think your way out of pain. You can only change how you hold it. Michael told me about a specific night when this became real for him. He was lying in bed, his hand on a fire with pain, and his mind was doing its usual spiral. This is forever. This is your life now. You're broken. You'll never create again. And suddenly he just stopped. Not because he had some profound realization, but because he was too tired to keep doing it. He let the thoughts be there without believing them. He let the pain be there without fighting it. And in that space, that tiny gap between stimulus and response, he found something he didn't expect. Peace. Not happiness, not comfort, but a kind of deep okayness with what was happening. The pain was still terrible, but he was okay. Both things were true at once. This is the paradox that everyone who learns to live with pain eventually encounters. You can be in pain and still be okay. You can feel terrible and still have peace. You can hate what's happening to you and still accept that it's happening. These things that seem contradictory are actually not contradictory at all. They're just different layers of experience happening simultaneously. The sensation layer, the emotional layer, the meaning layer, and you have some control over those deeper layers, even when you have no control over the sensation itself. Now let's talk about the other kind of pain, the kind that doesn't show up on medical scans, but can destroy you just as thoroughly. Emotional pain, grief, heartbreak, betrayal, failure, shame, loneliness, the pain of watching someone you love suffer, the pain of losing someone you can't get back, the pain of becoming someone you don't recognize. This pain is sneakier than physical pain because there's no visible wound, no objective measure. You can't point to it. You can't show people where it hurts. And because of that, there's often this added layer of invalidation, this feeling that you should be over it by now, that you're weak for still hurting, that everyone else would handle it better. But here's what I've learned talking to people who've survived devastating emotional pain. The same principles apply. The pain is real. The sensation of heartbreak, of grief, of shame, these are actual physical sensations in your body, even if they don't have a clear location like a broken bone. And the suffering comes from the same place. The stories you tell about the pain, the resistance to it, the belief that you shouldn't be feeling this way, the fear that it will never end, the shame about having these feelings in the first place. Let me tell you about Sarah. She lost her son in a car accident 5 years ago. He was 17, and for the first 2 years after his death, she did what you'd expect. She fell apart. She couldn't function. The grief was so massive that it swallowed everything else in her life. But here's where her story gets interesting. Around year 3, something shifted. Not that the grief got smaller, that's not how grief works, but her relationship to it changed. She stopped trying to push it away. She stopped feeling guilty about the moments when she felt okay. She stopped believing that her grief meant she couldn't also feel other things. And slowly, painfully, she learned to carry the grief with her instead of being buried underneath it. She describes it like this. At first, the grief was the ocean, and she was drowning in it. Then she was treading water, fighting to keep her head above the surface, exhausting herself with the effort. But eventually, somehow, she became the ocean. The grief was still there, immense and deep and powerful, but it was inside her, part of her, and she was big enough to contain it. She could feel the grief fully and still have room for love, for gratitude, for connection, for moments of laughter that didn't erase the sorrow, but existed alongside it. The grief didn't diminish. She expanded. This is what living with pain without being destroyed looks like. You don't get smaller than the pain. You get bigger than it. You create space inside yourself for the pain to exist without it consuming everything else. And this isn't some abstract spiritual concept. It's a practical skill that you can develop. It starts with willingness. Willingness to feel what you're feeling without immediately reaching for something to numb it or distract from it. Willingness to sit with discomfort, to breathe through it, to let it move through you instead of getting stuck inside you. Because here's the thing about emotional pain that most people don't realize. It wants to move. Emotions are not static states. They're processes, energy and motion, which is literally what the word emotion means. They rise, they peak, they fall, but only if you let them. When you resist an emotion, when you push it down or deny it, or try to think your way out of it, you freeze it in place. It becomes this solid thing lodged inside you, draining your energy, affecting everything you do, even though you're not consciously aware of it anymore. And it can stay frozen like that for years, for decades, for your entire life. The way to unfreeze it is almost painfully simple. You feel it. Fully, completely, without judgment. You make space for the emotion to exist without trying to change it or fix it or understand it. You just let it be there. And what happens when you do this, when you actually allow yourself to feel emotional pain instead of running from it, is remarkable. The pain moves through you. It transforms. It doesn't stay at peak intensity forever. It teaches you something about yourself, about your capacity, about your resilience. And then it passes, or it softens, or it integrates into who you are in a way that doesn't destroy you, but actually deepens you. There's a concept in psychology called experiential avoidance, and it's linked to almost every form of psychological suffering: depression, anxiety, addiction, eating disorders, relationship problems, career paralysis. All of it traces back, at least partially, to this fundamental unwillingness to feel uncomfortable emotions. We live in a culture that tells us we should be happy all the time, comfortable all the time, and that any negative emotion is a problem to be solved or a symptom to be medicated. But that's not how humans work. Negative emotions are not malfunctions, they're information. They're part of the full range of human experience. And when you treat them as the enemy, when you build your entire life around avoiding them, you end up in a prison of your own making. The freedom on the other side of experiential avoidance is hard to describe until you've felt it, but people who've learned to stop running from their pain often say the same thing, that the emotions they were most afraid of, the ones they thought would destroy them if they let them in, they didn't. They hurt, sometimes terribly, but the person survived, and in surviving, in proving to themselves that they could feel the worst thing and still be okay, they gained access to a kind of courage and aliveness that people who spend their lives in avoidance never know. Michael, the tattoo artist, talks about this. He says the pain in his hand taught him that he was capable of feeling things he thought would kill him. And once he learned that, once he proved to himself that he could be in agony and still create, still love, still find meaning, he stopped being afraid of his own experience. He stopped trying to control everything. He stopped needing life to be comfortable all the time. And paradoxically, that's when his life got better. Not because the pain went away, it didn't, but because he stopped making the pain the center of everything. There's another piece to this puzzle that we haven't talked about yet. Purpose, meaning, the why behind the pain. Viktor Frankl, who survived Auschwitz and went on to found an entire school of psychotherapy, wrote that humans can endure almost any how if they have a strong enough why. He watched people in the concentration camps, and he noticed that the ones who survived, at least psychologically, were often the ones who found some meaning in their suffering. Not that the suffering was good or deserved or purposeful in itself, but that they could connect their survival to something larger than themselves, a person they wanted to see again, a work they needed to complete, a message they needed to share, something that made the suffering part of a larger story instead of just meaningless torture. This is powerful medicine for pain. When your suffering connects to something that matters, it becomes bearable in a way it otherwise wouldn't be. This is why some people who survive terrible illness become advocates for others with the same condition, why people who lose loved ones to violence become activists for change, why people who overcome addiction dedicate their lives to helping others get sober. They're not glad they suffered. They would undo it if they could. But given that the suffering happened, they found a way to let it mean something, to extract value from it, to let it count towards something larger than just their own private hell. You don't have to do something grand or public with your pain for this principle to apply. The meaning you find can be quiet and personal. Maybe your pain teaches you empathy for others who suffer. Maybe it shows you what really matters and what doesn't. Maybe it strips away all the superficial concerns you used to obsess over and leaves you with a kind of clarity about how you want to spend your remaining time. Maybe it connects you more deeply to your own humanity and the humanity of everyone around you. All of us stumbling through this difficult existence. All of us in pain sometimes. All of us doing our best. There's something else that happens when you learn to live with pain instead of being destroyed by it. You become less afraid. Not less afraid of pain exactly, but less afraid of life. Because so much of how we move through the world is dictated by fear of discomfort. We avoid risks because we're afraid of failure. We don't pursue what we really want because we're afraid of rejection. We stay in situations that don't serve us because we're afraid of the pain of leaving. We don't love fully because we're afraid of heartbreak. We don't create because we're afraid of criticism. We live these small, protected half-lives because we're trying to minimize pain. But here's the secret. You can't. Pain is part of the deal. It's woven into the fabric of existence, and all your efforts to avoid it don't actually protect you. They just make you miss out on everything else. When you stop being afraid of pain, when you know from direct experience that you can feel it and survive it, you become free to actually live. You can take risks, you can be vulnerable, you can pursue what matters even if it might not work out. You can love deeply even though loss is inevitable. You can create even though criticism might hurt. Because you're no longer making decisions from a place of protecting yourself from pain. You're making decisions from a place of engaging fully with life, pain included. Michael tattoos people now who are getting pieces to commemorate their own pain. Cancer survivors, people with chronic illness, people who've lost loved ones. And he tells them what his pain taught him, that the tattoo will hurt and that's okay, that the hurt is temporary and the art is permanent, that you can choose to make something beautiful out of the experience of pain, that the pain doesn't have to be erased or hidden or pretended away. It can be acknowledged, honored, integrated into the story you tell about yourself. There's a meditation teacher who says that peace is not the absence of difficulty, but the ability to be with difficulty without resistance. Read that again. Peace is not the absence of difficulty, but the ability to be with difficulty without resistance. This is the whole game. This is everything. You're not trying to create a life without pain. You can't. You're trying to develop the capacity to be with pain, to hold it, to let it exist without it destroying your inner equilibrium. And the practice of this is simple, though not easy. When pain arises, physical or emotional, instead of immediately trying to fix it or fight it or escape it, you pause, you breathe, you observe what's happening without judgment. You notice the sensations in your body. You notice the thoughts in your mind. You notice the emotions moving through you. And you make a conscious choice to allow it all, to let it be there, to stop adding resistance on top of the original pain. This doesn't mean you don't take medicine if you need it. It doesn't mean you don't seek help or therapy or treatment. It means that while you're doing those things, while you're taking practical steps to address the pain where possible, you also practice acceptance of what's true right now. You don't add mental suffering to physical pain. You don't torture yourself with stories about how things should be different. You work with reality as it is, not as you wish it were. The woman from the photograph, the one on the beach at sunrise, her name was Linda. I say was because she died about a year after that photo was taken. Her 6-month prognosis turned out to be generous. But in those final months, she lived more fully than most people live in decades. She told me that facing death had a strange effect. It made everything else seem less important. The pain didn't matter as much because she knew it was temporary. The loss of her daughter was still devastating, but she stopped asking why it happened and started focusing on what she still had: time, breath, sunrises, the ability to love the people still in her life, the capacity to feel something, anything, even if some of those feelings were painful. She said something to me in one of our last conversations that I think about almost every day. She said, "We treat pain like it's the worst thing that can happen to us. But I've learned that the worst thing is not feeling anything at all. Pain means you're alive. Pain means you loved someone or something enough to hurt when it's gone. Pain means you're still here, still experiencing, still connected to this incredible, terrible, beautiful existence. And I wouldn't trade that for numbness, not for anything." This is the final piece of the puzzle. Pain is not the enemy. Numbness is. Disconnection is. The absence of feeling is. Pain, as awful as it is still a form of aliveness. It's still a connection to your body, your heart, your humanity. And when you can see it that way, when you can recognize that even the worst pain is still evidence that you're here, that you're real, that you're alive, something fundamental shifts in your relationship to your entire existence. You stop asking, "How do I get rid of this pain?" and start asking, "How do I live fully even though this pain is here?" And that second question opens up possibilities that the first question closes off. It lets you have pain and joy simultaneously, grief and gratitude, fear and courage. All of it together, the full catastrophic beauty of being human. Living with pain without letting it destroy you is not about transcending pain or rising above it or achieving some enlightened state where nothing bothers you anymore. It's about being present with what is. It's about making space inside yourself for the full spectrum of human experience. It's about recognizing that you're bigger than any single sensation or emotion or circumstance. That pain is something you're experiencing, but it's not the totality of who you are. And maybe the most important thing I can leave you with is this: you are not broken. Pain does not make you broken. Suffering does not make you broken. Being unable to fix yourself does not make you broken. You are a human being having a human experience, and that experience includes pain. It always has. It always will. And you are capable of feeling that pain without it destroying you. You're stronger than you know, more resilient than you believe, and the pain you're most afraid of, the pain you think will swallow you whole, it won't. It'll hurt. It'll hurt terribly, but you will survive it. And on the other side of that survival is a kind of freedom that people who spend their lives running from discomfort never discover. Pain tried to take everything from Linda, so she decided to take something back, not by defeating the pain, but by refusing to let it define her, by living fully in the space that remained, by feeling everything, the agony and the joy, the grief and the gratitude, all of it until her last breath. And if she could do that, facing death and loss and unimaginable suffering, then maybe we can too. Maybe we can stop fighting our pain and start dancing with it. Maybe we can stop trying to be comfortable all the time and start trying to be alive. Maybe we can recognize that pain is part of the price of admission to this extraordinary existence, and that it's worth it. All of it. even the parts that hurt.